Hi, my name is Elise Bates, and I am from Massachusetts. But on Friday, December 14th, 2012, I lived in Fairfield, Connecticut with my two children, 8 years old and 6 years old. And that morning at 7:45, I took my daughter to the bus, and at 8, I dropped my 6-year-old son off at school. And then went home like I did every day after drop off to get as much work done as I possibly could before my kids came home from school. I had the TV on in the background and was, as always, kind of listening to the news. And all of a sudden, alerts came up that there was a shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School, 20 miles from where I was living and where I was. And I remember seeing the cop cars, and I remember silence. I remember watching the TV, and it was silent, and there was no report. There was no update. It was just quiet for hours because kids had been killed, teachers had been killed. And I remember hearing that Adam Lanza was unable to open locked doors and shot his way through a window near the front office. Where there's a will, there's a way. And if he had not had an automatic weapon that day, people would have been able to intervene and help stop him. I worked really hard that day. It was a Friday morning, to ensure that when my kids got home from school, they would not have any idea what had just gone on at Sandy Hook Elementary School. We kept them quiet all weekend. We did not turn the TV on for probably 2 weeks. We drove them to school every day. We picked them up. We did not want their fear to be out of control based on what we had seen at Sandy Hook. It's very hard, as my son was born on August 16th, 2006, and was the same age as Dylan, Daniel, James, Chase, Jack, Noah, Benjamin, and Jesse. He is now a 16-year-old boy. He's taking driver's ed. He's a freshman in high school. And none of those 8 boys have that opportunity because Adam Lanza was able to go in with the semi-automatic weapon and slaughter those children that day. As I said, I was able to keep that from my kids for 2 years. 2 years later, my daughter, at 10 at the time, was in 3rd grade, and they had an active shooter lockdown at the school. She was in chorus with 40 other children because it was a double chorus class, and the chorus teacher put them all behind the curtain on stage. And they sat behind that curtain, behind the stage, for 2.5 hours, not knowing what was going on, in quiet lockdown. Kids being kids, they were 10 years old, some and very nervous. Kids were crying. My daughter found out about Sandy Hook that day while she was sitting behind the curtain. They were all in tears. They were hysterical. And the teacher said to the class, my daughter told me this when she came home, if you don't shut up, the shooter's going to come in here first. That's the panic that has to be told to 10-year-old kids on a stage because one music teacher was responsible for the lives of 40 children. They couldn't go to the bathroom. They were going to the bathroom in garbage cans behind the stage because there was nowhere to go. 2.5 hours later, they were sent home. 2.5 hours later, my daughter asked me what happened at Sandy Hook and why people were peeing in trash cans and why would an active shooter come into school to kill them. They were at school. I don't have answers for those kinds of questions, and I don't think parents across the country have answers for those kinds of questions. But I also don't think sons and daughters of people who are shot in churches or malls or movie theaters or places of work or concert venues have any of those answers. I'm hoping that we have a moment in time right now where the Senate is meeting and we're hoping to pass some kind of common sense legislation finally. I think it's a start. I know a lot of gun owners. I know a lot of responsible gun owners. And I think people should own guns. I think responsible owners should own guns. And I know when it's quiet and no one's around, gun owners say we should not have semi-automatic weapons running around the state, running around this country. That's not why gun owners have guns. We need laws that talk about nonviolent protests, because one of the biggest arguments is, hey, I'm afraid if somebody or if there's a march and it gets violent, I have to protect my house and my family, and that's fair. So there should not be violent protests. There should be quiet, silent protests across the state, and that's what our law enforcement is for. And that's why we should fund our law enforcement so that they can do their jobs. They can't do their jobs in Uvalde because they're terrified of semi-automatic weapons. They stood outside that classroom for an hour because they were scared to go in. Imagine the proposal to have teachers being armed. How's a teacher going to protect themselves who isn't a trained law enforcement or retired Army officer? If they can't do it, a teacher's not able to do it. And I know everybody in the quiet of their own home understands that. And I think if people finally take this moment to sit around and calmly talk about what can productively happen, responsible gun owners can have guns in their houses and take care of them. And our children and our parents and our brothers and sisters can go to public places and be safe. So what can Congress do? Congress can pass the Brady bill that's been in line for years. We don't need weapons of war. We do not need weapons of war on the streets. Our law enforcement don't want them, and our people don't want them. Let's get them off the street. But gun owners, responsible gun owners, should own guns. I believe we can do this. I believe that every parent or family member across the country wants to have a safe country. I don't think they want to have conversations with their kids before every time they go out to a public space, have their parents say, hey, remember, if something happens, don't hide in place. You're a target. Fucking run. That's the conversation we're having, whether you go to a concert or a grocery store or to school. It's run as fast as you can, because shooters can't catch you. It's a lot harder than if you're sitting in a corner or locked in a closet or hiding behind a grocery aisle or hiding behind a pew. You run, and run fast. Those are the conversations we're having. We don't need to have those conversations anymore. And I think everyone in the government can agree with that. So let's have a reasonable conversation and let's solve this problem. Thank you for listening.